My name is Cam, and I am the director here at the Churchtown Dairy, and I am really thrilled to be able to welcome you all here today. The Churchtown Dairy is a working biodynamic raw milk dairy farm whose mission is to serve as a beacon for those working to promote regenerative agriculture and restorative communities. Today, we are really thrilled to welcome Sally Fallon Morell. Sally is best known as the author of Nourishing Traditions, which is the cookbook that challenges politically correct nutrition and the diet dictocrats. Sally's interest in the subject of nutrition began in the early 70s when she read Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weaton A. Price. She is the founding president of the Weaton A. Price Foundation. She edits the foundation's quarterly newsletter. And she also founded a campaign for real milk, which promotes increasing access to raw milk throughout the United States. Together with Abby, Sally serves on the advisory board of the Raw Milk Institute. I knew we wanted to have Sally here to speak when I read that you said, Sally, that if you can't see the teeth marks in the butter on your bread, then you don't have enough butter on it. So, with that, we'll welcome Sally. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you. Thank you very much, Cam. And I will start with a question. Is the sound all right back there like this? Yes. So thank you, Abby. Thank you, Cam, all of these wonderful volunteers. It's a delight to be here. I also just want to introduce my husband, Jeffrey Morell, who's sitting here. Many of you know him. Jeffrey does the really interesting stuff. I do the boring nutrition stuff. And I have never shared the stage with swallows before. But the swallow is an amazing bird. It eats half its weight in insects every day. And the insects are 60 to 80% of calories in the insect is fat. And then we have the cows who live here in the winter. Now, you may think that the cows eat grass, but actually the cows take grass in and ferment it and produce fatty acids from the grass, things like butyric acid and caprylic acid, and that is the food for the cows. So the cow's diet is actually a very high-fat diet. So that's just a little preview of the direction we're going to go today. Okay. So how to translate the principles of traditional diets into nutritious, delicious meals. And that's the really good news that we have for people looking for a healthy diet. There is no renunciation on the Wise Traditions diet. You can have everything on this diet. You just have to choose carefully. So we'll go first into these principles, and then we'll get practical and talk about what you can do to just start eating this way. So, and can we see here? Yeah. So the first question is, what is a healthy diet? Is anyone here confused about what is a healthy diet? So much confusion out there. Is it an Atkins type diet based on meat, or recent versions of that, the keto, carnivore, or is it the vegetarian vegan diet about which so many claims are made? And just when you think, people have realized how deficient this diet is, there's another big push for the vegetarian vegan diet. And then we have all these dietary schemes: the zone, macrobiotic, South Beach, juicing, food combining, blood type, metabolic typing, all raw. I call these schemes because they were all made up by men. And by that I mean men who never had to put a meal on the table for a hungry family day after day after day. And honey, I don't care what your blood type is. You're going to eat what I fixed you, So these diets are just not practical. And I got a scathing criticism once saying that, I'm talking about all these obsolete old diets. And I think that's the whole point. These schemes, they come and go, in my youth, we had a diet called the mucus-free diet, and that's come and gone. So these are schemes, and they're made up, and they just don't work in the real world. But anyway, even Lisa, who's a very smart little girl, even Lisa is confused about what constitutes a healthy diet. And then we have the U.S. government official diet, which is until recently was based on a food pyramid. And that came in 1984 when the food pyramid came out. It gave Americans the green light to eat all the carbohydrates they wanted. This was a carbohydrate-based diet. And since that time, obesity rates in this country have tripled. So folks, this is not working. Okay? And it was actually not a diet based on science. It's designed to promote the products of commodity agriculture. It was formulated by the marketing department of the USDA, and the whole idea of this diet is to get you to eat and eat and eat because you're not satisfied on this type of diet. And those who've suffered the most are our children being brought up on this very high carb, nutrient deficient diet, low in fat. And we've seen the epidemic of learning disorders and really malnutrition. This is what our children are suffering from, is malnutrition. And of course, this is how it actually translates in the real world. And this is exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to promote the products of commodity agriculture, support the big food producers. Now, notice that they put Pepsi and Coca-Cola and the sweet things at the top, just a tiny bit, but obviously, you get so hungry on this diet that you have cravings that you can't control. So to answer the question, what is a healthy diet, and to get us going this morning so we can make the right food choices, we need to go to the work of Dr. Weston Price, who wrote this wonderful book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, back in 1945, and it is a book that catalogs his studies of isolated traditional peoples all over the world that he traveled to visit and to study. Dr. Price was a dentist, so first and foremost, he was interested in dental health. He wanted to know if he could find isolated groups that had excellent dental health. And by that he meant no cavities, no dental deformities. In other words, no crooked teeth. So he had a nephew who worked for the National Geographic, and the reports were coming in of these people who had beautiful teeth, straight and white as piano keys, as some people said. And this intrigued Dr. Price very much because that's not what he was seeing in his practice. He was seeing mouthfuls of decay and cavities and lots of narrow palates and crooked teeth. And he did not think this was normal. So he went to find these healthy people, good dental health, and by inference, good overall health. And if he could find these people, then he wanted to know, what were they eating? He wanted to answer the question, what is a healthy diet? Well, a healthy diet is a diet that produces healthy people. And we're very lucky that he was able to study these healthy people before they disappeared. We won't spend a lot of time on Dr. Price. We'll just look at a few places he went to. But the first place was the Leuenthal Valley in Switzerland. This was in the 1931. Switzerland had embarked on a campaign of road building to connect all the towns and villages in the country, but they hadn't quite finished, and this remote valley was still only, you could only access it by a footpath, too narrow for a wheeled cart. So he could be assured the foods they were eating there were foods that they grew and processed right there, except for salt. They did carry salt in. Now, when Dr. Price came to a tribe or village, he asked for help from the local health officials so he could have a translator. He sat down with the elders, he explained what he wanted to do, and when he had their permission, he lined up everybody in the village and meticulously counted cavities and also noted the presence of dental deformities. And all of this was published in peer-reviewed journals of the day, so it's very scientific. Well, you can imagine the amazement of the dentist from Cleveland, Ohio, lining up the children in the village. I hope you can see on the left. There were no cavities. Well, one tooth in 3 mouths had some evidence of decay, so less than 1% tooth decay. And the children did not brush their teeth. He delicately described their teeth as covered in green slime. Okay? They didn't have toothpaste, they didn't have toothbrushes, they didn't have fluoridated water. Their mouths were kind of yucky, but they had no cavities. So one of his very first conclusions was that oral hygiene has nothing to do with cavities. Now, please don't think I'm telling you not to brush your teeth, okay? Because I do think we should brush our teeth, but it's not going to prevent cavities. It's just going to give you nice breath and make your teeth look nice. And the other thing was that everybody in the village had naturally straight teeth. Nobody needed braces. They had beautiful faces. The women were noted for their beauty in this village. He often talks about the middle third of the face as being wide, so that's where the cheekbones are. They were wide. They were wider than the eyes. And that very good formation of the middle third of the face gave them a wide palate on the top and then also wide palate on the bottom, so there's plenty of room for all the teeth to come in. The children were very sturdy and strong. The beautiful photograph on the right, they are barefooted. They played in the streams coming off the glaciers during weather when he and his wife had to button up their overcoats. And they were tall and handsome children. If you look closely, you see how round the faces are. The men in the village were noted for their great strength. They routinely won the athletic contests throughout Switzerland and often were chosen to be in the Swiss Guard in the Vatican. And the women, as I said, were noted for their great beauty. Another thing that was completely absent in this village was tuberculosis. The Swiss health officials were kind of perplexed by this because they lived in damp houses. They were always breathing in smoke from their fireplaces, and yet there was absolutely no tuberculosis in this village. So here he'd found this healthy population. The question is, what were they eating? Well, the number one source of calories in this village was dairy foods: raw milk, raw cream, raw cheese, raw butter. In fact, raw milk, of course, was the food that was accused of causing tuberculosis throughout Switzerland. And yet these people lived on raw milk, okay? The other important food in the diet was rye bread, which they made into a very dense sourdough loaf. And so the basis of this diet was dairy foods and grains. And that brings me to the paleo diet, another one of those fad diets, that says to be healthy, we should avoid these two foods that are new to the humankind, dairy foods and grains. And yet here was a superbly healthy population living on dairy foods and grains. Okay? But the dairy foods were raw. They were very different from the dairy foods we get in the supermarket. And the grains were prepared with great care in a way that's completely different from the way we prepare our grains today. They also ate meat. Every dairying culture does eat meat, usually veal. They kill the male calves. And when they killed an animal, like all traditional cultures, they ate the whole animal. They ate the organ meats, they ate the fat, they ate the head. They kept the blood. They made rye pancakes with the blood. So this is one of the most fundamental differences between modern people and traditional people. And so we need to learn to eat those organ meats. We need to learn to eat nose to tail. We need to find ways of making offal taste good. Okay? Now, every traditional culture that he visited had one or more sacred foods, and the sacred foods were considered very important for having healthy children. And they started eating these sacred foods 6 months before conception. They prepared for having children with these special foods. And then the foods continued through pregnancy and through breastfeeding and through the growth of the child. This is quite amazing. Whether it was Africa, Alaska, Switzerland, they all had this notion that they were responsible for the health of their child. And they could create a healthy child by eating in a certain way. We are very careless about how we bring children into the world in our culture today. We don't have special diets, or if we do have a special diet, it's all wrong. And when something goes wrong with the child, we blame it on what I call the 3 Gs: germs, genes, and God. Okay? Okay. But these people realized that it was their responsibility. It wasn't God's fault. It wasn't some, devil's fault. It was their responsibility. Now, the sacred food in the Swiss village was a special type of butter that came from the cows when they first went to pasture in the spring, when the grass was growing very rapidly, lush green. And this butter was a deep orange color. And so sacred did they consider this butter that they had a special ceremony in their churches where they lit a wick in the bowl of butter to honor the life-giving force in the butter. So all traditional cultures had one or more of these sacred foods for having healthy babies. Dr. Price did his work at a time when he was able to compare primitive and modernized people all over the world. This is when roads were being built, modern foods were coming in. He called them the displacing foods of modern commerce. And these photographs were taken in a village that had been connected by a road some years earlier. As soon as the road came, there were stores, and the stores were full of the foods of commerce, based on sugar, white flour, so jams, jellies, pastries. No longer drank raw milk. They had canned condensed milk, and they were selling most of their milk to the chocolate factory. And vegetable oils. This is something completely new in the human diet. In those days it was corn oil and cottonseed oil. But these have never been in the human diet before. Here he found 1 tooth in 3 was decayed in children and adults. Very tragic, causing a lot of pain. Often there were no dentists in these towns. And then in the next generation, the children, if you look in the lower 2 photographs, the children born to the parents who had changed their diet had crowded and crooked teeth. So it just took 1 generation for the change in facial structure. This change is not a genetic change. It is a dietary change. The Gaelic people that he studied on the Outer Hebrides had beautiful teeth, no cavities, no tuberculosis. They were very hardy and happy people. But their diet was very different. They lived on a windswept island. They had no animals, no animal foods. They had no fruit trees. They had no vegetables, no kale. How could they possibly be healthy? So and these people lived on seafood of all types, and not just the skinless fillets. They ate the organs of the fish, the heads of the fish. They ate shellfish. They did have one green food, which was seaweed, and they were able to grow oats on the island, so they had porridge and oat cakes. And the sacred food, the food that children got every morning so they would grow up healthy and strong, was cod's head stuffed with oats and chopped cod's liver. So, eat your breakfast here. Okay. So there's many ways of doing this. You may not want to do it that way. And finally, I'll just show you the Seminole Indians of Florida. Beautiful faces. Everyone had naturally straight teeth. They all look like nobility. Okay, and we are all nobility, right? We're the family of man. We have perfect genetics, all of us. And whether those genetics manifest is due to what we do as far as the diet is concerned. And these people lived on game, fish in the Everglades. By the way, game is surprisingly fatty in hot climates. Now let's compare our beautiful Indian princess on the upper right with someone from her same tribe, same genetics, who was born after the parents changed their diet to the modern diet. And you can see the narrowing of the face and the crowding of the teeth, and that's the inside part of the body that we can see. When teeth are crowded and the palate's narrow, it's a sign that there may be other problems in the body. We say the teeth tell the tale. If the teeth are straight and the face is broad, that means there's going to be plenty of room in the head for all these master glands in the head: the pituitary, the pineal, the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the master gland. It is the seat of impulse control. And when we think of traditional people, we think of people who are very stoic, who can manage cold and heat and deprivation. When we think of modern children, what do we see? We see lack of impulse control. So there's not enough room for the hypothalamus. It hasn't been built properly. When the teeth are straight, you see good skeletal development, good musculature. You tend to have very keen eyesight and hearing, optimal function of all the organs, and it was something Dr. Price noticed all over the world, optimistic outlook. People smiled and laughed a lot and learned easily. Excellent memories in traditional people. And finally, when the face is broad and the teeth are straight, the pelvic opening is round, and that is the ideal shape for childbirth. And this was a universal observation among the early explorers, how easy it was for traditional people to have babies. It seemed to have no pain whatsoever in having a baby. Now, right-hand column, column B, when the teeth are crowded and crooked, it is a sign that the nutrition has not been optimal during this period of growth, and you're going to have problems elsewhere as well. Compromised space in the master glands of the head. You won't have as capacious sinus cavities, ear tubes. They might be more prone to infection. Poor posture, poor development, easily injured, poor eyesight and hearing. Eyesight's one of the first things to go. Compromised function of the organs, and then we have what's an epidemic today: depression, behavior problems, learning problems. And finally, the pelvic opening is not round anymore, it's oval, and this is a very difficult shape for the baby to get out. And so childbirth becomes extremely painful and life-threatening. And we think it's a terrible thing, all these cesareans that we're seeing today, and many of them are not necessary, but many of them are absolutely necessary to save the mother's life. This photograph perfectly illustrates, and gosh, it's gotten a little bit cloudy, so pray for clouds. The difference between normal facial development on the right, see the broad face, looks like the facial bones are very strong, the palate is wide, the teeth are straight. The face on the left is a modern face. That's what we look like today. And it almost looks like the face, rather than supporting itself, is hanging from the skull. And that's a compromise that the body makes when the building materials are not optimal, not strong enough. And these are the typical dental deformities that orthodontists see today. They sometimes tell you it's just hereditary or caused by thumb sucking. The latest theory is that this is caused by soft food, which doesn't make any sense at all, because you can tell when a baby's born before it's ever eaten any food, the shape of its face. In Dr. Price's day, the theory was a very racist theory, and that was race mixing. People said that this was caused by mixed races, and Dr. Price was very quick to point out that he saw beautiful facial development in people of mixed race if they were eating the traditional foods. And people of, the parents of the same race had all of these problems if they were eating modern foods. So this is the facial bones here on the right. Well, they're both the same one. The bone that is first affected by poor nutrition is the maxilla. That's that purple bone there. That is the upper jawbone. That determines the shape of the cheekbones and the shape of the upper palate. Almost every bone in the skull touches on the maxilla, so it determines the size of the cavities inside of the head and so forth. And the second bone to be affected is the mandible, the lower jawbone, which is what gives you the wide jaw and the well-shaped chin. I have a few photographs of my own. This is a woman born in the 1920s. She looks like all the beautiful women in the black and white movies. Okay, this is a typical American beauty, naturally straight teeth, and she grew up on a diet that we can all embrace. She didn't have to eat fish heads stuffed with chopped cod's liver or anything like that, insects, but she grew up on whole raw milk. Raw Jersey milk, pasture-fed, lots of butter and cream. This is before, all these crazy people started to tell us butter and cream was bad. She lived on the Chesapeake, lots of shellfish. Fish eggs were part of her diet. They were a sacred food in many cultures. Meat, and especially liver. In those days, people ate liver once a week because the doctors told them to. And chicken broth, part of her diet, fruits, vegetables, and one other food that was in everybody's diet up to the Second World War, and that was cod liver oil. That was the greatest health effort that this country's ever had. When you went to school, you got your cod liver oil. The doctors told the moms to give cod liver oil. You even got cod liver oil in Sunday school, okay? It was a really big health push. Because, for one thing, cod liver oil, they had done studies. They knew that it protected you from things like measles. They had done studies showing that in factories, if they gave cod liver oil, they had less absenteeism. And they also were starting to understand about certain vitamins and how they affected growth. So all these children got cod liver oil. This is a Central American village. These children are poor. They may be deprived, but they have the greatest gift that any child can have, and that's normal physical development. This diet possibly could be described as a plant-based diet. Lots of corn and beans. But again, when they killed an animal, they ate the whole animal, they ate the organ meats. They ate a lot of insects, which is a very nutrient-dense food, ask the swallows here. And if they had access to milk, it was raw milk. By contrast, our modern children have narrow faces. Most children born in America need braces to straighten their teeth. They're plagued with allergies, asthma. We have a huge health crisis with our children today, especially with learning disorders and behavior disorders. Okay, so all these diets were different. You had a different diet in Alaska and the Seminole Indians and the Swiss people. So how are we going to draw any conclusions about Dr. Price's work? Well, one thing that he actually himself wrote about was the inclusion of animal foods in every diet. He had hoped to find a diet of traditional people that was a vegetarian diet, and he did not find one. And he said this very clearly. He said, "I was disappointed. Every diet that I looked at contained animal foods, and all of the sacred foods for having healthy babies were animal foods, and they went to a lot of risk and effort to obtain the animal foods." So this is an important lesson for us, especially if we want to have healthy children and grandchildren. We were just having a discussion earlier today about these young women who are vegans who are being told it's just fine, you can have babies if you're a vegan. And this is almost like child abuse, really, to bring a child in the world on a vegan diet. I'm not going to mince words here. And I think all of us have this responsibility to get this message to our young women, because if they'll listen. So, animal foods, fish and shellfish, not just the skinless fillets, the organs, the oil, the bones, the heads. Weston Price found that the best bone structure was among those eating seafood. Birds, many cultures ate birds, chickens, ducks, geese, and of course what they wanted was the organ meats, the fat, and the skin. They actually left fruit on the trees for the birds to eat so they'd get fat. Fat was very important. And then red meat in many cultures, with the organ meats and fat preferred. The Plains Indians, for example, when the hunting was good, they killed an animal, they immediately ate the brain, the tongue, the marrow, and the liver. All the other organ meats were shredded up and put in the stomach, along with some of the fat and some of the tenderest meat, all cut up, and that was smoked over a fire. Most of the lean meat was just thrown away or given to the dogs. Milk and milk products gave these cultures a real advantage because they always had this healthy, nutritious food. They always had animals. And then eggs, again, a sacred food in many cultures. Reptiles and insects are not part of our diet, but we need to recognize these as very healthy foods. So why are these animal foods so important? Well, there's certain nutrients that we can only get from animal foods, starting with vitamins A and D, which we'll talk about in more detail. Cholesterol. Cholesterol is an essential nutrient for growing children. Growing children do not make cholesterol, and they need a lot of cholesterol for the growth of their brain And the second brain, what's the second brain? The gut, okay? The cells lining the gut are very rich in cholesterol, and if you don't have that cholesterol, the gut's not going to work very well. Mother's milk is extremely rich in cholesterol and has special enzymes to ensure that 100% of that cholesterol is absorbed. And always the first foods for babies in traditional cultures were high cholesterol foods like liver and egg yolks. We are giving our babies foods with no cholesterol, rice cereal and applesauce. It's a terrible way to start out. I noticed we were in a feed store, and actually it was a tractor store, and they had feed there. They had milk replacer for calves. And the third ingredient in that milk replacer was animal fat. Just said animal fat on the label. So, you know, the vets and all these animal scientists, they know that these calves need animal fat to grow. You read the ingredients on formula, there is no cholesterol in infant formula in this country. I mean, this is a crime. B12, very important nutrient we get from animal foods, and certain types of fats. You've heard of these EPA and DHA, omega-3 fatty acids we get from seafood. But there's also one that's an omega-6 fatty acids, arachidonic acid, that we get from animal fats. And it's absolutely essential for growth. And we only get it from animal fats, not from seafood. Then the right-hand column, there's many nutrients. They're in the plants, but they're much harder to absorb from the plants. Calcium, B6, magnesium, iron, zinc, copper, they're bound up in the plants, and they have to be released through digestive processes, which are very hard for children and for many adults. As for calcium, there really are only two sources of calcium in the human diet, and we need quite a bit of calcium, especially for growth. It's dairy foods, raw dairy, or bones. And cultures that did not have herd animals ground up the bones of small animals or birds and added them to their food. And this is one of the real dangers of these carnivore and keto and paleo diets, is the lack of calcium in these diets. Because they're not grinding up small birds and putting them into their food. B12 deficiency is very serious. The early signs are neurological, fatigue, tingling in the hands and feet, sleep disorders, and a tendency to irrational anger. Someone always flying off the handle. You want to look into B12 deficiency. 85 to 90% of the people in our mental institutions are B12 deficient. And more severe deficiency results in things like depression, obsessive compulsive behavior, manic depression, and dementia. Some people think that Alzheimer's is actually a B12 deficiency disease. And then it also manifests as other chronic diseases. Multiple sclerosis is one. Okay, so really key thing, they were all eating animal foods. Another key finding of Dr. Price is this finding of nutrient density. He took the foods home to his laboratory in Cleveland, Ohio, and analyzed them for vitamins and minerals. He had a German lab technician who was just doing these analyses all the time. And he found that the diets were extremely high in minerals. This is where our organic farming comes in. This is where getting the nutrients back in the soil is so important, because if they're not in the soil, they're not going to be in our food. This is where the seafood is also so important, because we know they're in the sea. So lots of minerals in these diets. But the really surprising thing was the very high levels of what he called the fat-soluble vitamins. They were 10 times higher than the American diet of his day. And this is the key focus of the Weaton A. Price Foundation. We call these the fat-soluble vitamins or the fat-soluble activators, because they were so high in Dr. Price's day. There are 3 of them. We're going to start with the first 2, vitamins A and D. Where do we get vitamins A and D? Well, we get them from certain types of seafood. Fish eggs was very, very high, and the fish eggs were a sacred food in many cultures. Fish livers and fish liver oil, so you think of your cod liver oil. Fish heads, extremely high in vitamin A, very important food, especially in Asia. shellfish, oily fish, and sea mammals like seals. The seal oil was the highest vitamin A food that he ever tested. Okay, so that's the seafood. But what about the land animals? Well, insects. So think of our swallows here. Okay? But we don't eat insects, so I'm not here to tell you you have to eat insects. But the rest of the list is what we want to focus on. Butter and cream, egg yolks, liver and other organ meats, and animal fats. If these animals are outside on pasture, so if they're on pasture, their animals are eating the green grass, which they turn into vitamin A. If they're in the sunlight, they turn the sunlight into vitamin D, and this will be in the food. So, butter, cream, egg yolks, liver, organ meats, animal fats. So my take-home message is, if you want to be healthy, eat as much of these foods as you possibly can, grass-fed. But your doctor's going to tell you something different, isn't he? These are the very foods that we're being told we should avoid. They're too high in cholesterol or saturated fat or whatever. And the very foods that were considered sacred in traditional cultures have been demonized in modern culture. And this is where we've gone off the rails. Dr. Price referred to these vitamins as activators because without these vitamins, we can't use all those minerals in our organic food, in our raw milk, in our seafood. We have to have A and D to use the minerals. He said it is possible to starve for minerals that are abundant in the foods eaten because they cannot be utilized without an adequate quantity of the fat-soluble activators. So when you put hollandaise sauce on your asparagus or butter on your carrots or cream in your soup, you're not being indulgent and bad. You're being very wise. You're doing what your body wants you to do so you can absorb all the minerals in those foods. If we think of the body as like a house or a temple made of bricks and mortar, the bricks are the minerals and the mortar is the fat-soluble activators, A and D. You can have lots of really strong bricks, but unless they're held together with mortar, your house is going to fall down. I'm going to get a little bit technical here because there's so much confusion. People say, yes, we need vitamin A, eat your carrots, or eat your green vegetables. But there's no vitamin A in plant foods. Excuse me. If you look in a biochemistry textbook, you'll read that. These are the precursors, the carotenes, and they are converted into the true vitamin A in the intestine by splitting and adding oxygen. So when you see a conversion that requires adding oxygen, that's a tough one. Needs lots of enzymes. And the truth is that this conversion is very, very difficult for most people, and it's actually impossible for about half the population. Half the European population lacks the enzymes to make this conversion. If we do have the enzymes, we still need fats in the diet. The conversion takes place in the presence of bile. We don't release bile unless we're eating fats. We need a thyroid hormone, vitamin E. But the key point is that babies and children of whatever race cannot make this conversion. They can't convert carotenes into vitamin A, and of course they're being told to be given squash and carrots for vitamin A, but they can't use that. And babies and children need more vitamin A as a function of body weight because they're growing. So this is again why in traditional cultures you see children being given foods like liver, butter, egg yolks. And this is how we need to get our children started. Diabetics also have a very difficult time making this conversion. And of course, the diabetic is put on a low-fat diet, which is really a sad thing. So there's many other conditions that will interfere with this conversion. So even under optimal conditions, we cannot get the vitamin A that we need from plant foods. We have to get it from those animal fats. Vitamin A is needed for everything. Not only for mineral assimilation, but for protein assimilation. We can't use protein without vitamin A. This is why you always want to eat meat with the fat. All traditional people ate meat with the fat. We're told to eat lean meat, skinless chicken breasts, skim milk, egg whites without the yolks, or protein powders. And one of our big messages is how dangerous these high protein diets are. especially when you get into protein powders, because when you eat all this protein, your body says, I need vitamin A to use this protein. I'm going to go to the liver where I store vitamin A and get the vitamin A that's there. And the quickest way to deplete yourself of this critical nutrient is to eat a high-protein, low-fat diet, which is what most people are doing today. So we're not about eating the huge steak every night for dinner. We're not about protein powders. We are about getting the fats back into our diet. Vitamin A is critical for proper growth. It is the concert master of fetal development, proper function of the glands. The thyroid cannot work without vitamin A. Your immune system can't function. I mean, it's just necessary for everything. And the thing that interests me the most is brain function, because vitamin A is required for planning and goal-oriented behavior, for following through with tasks, for coming up with an idea, planning for it, and carrying through. This is what makes us happy. This is the basis of happiness. I mean, good food, good sex, comfortable living, beautiful surroundings are all necessary for happiness. But real happiness comes from goal-oriented behavior. And we need vitamin A for that. So I call vitamin A the happiness vitamin. And we just talked about cholesterol for a minute. We call cholesterol the mother of all hormones. All the sex hormones are made out of cholesterol. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, they're all made out of cholesterol. Do you really want to lower your cholesterol? Really want to avoid cholesterol? And it is vitamin A that makes those conversions. So vitamin A is really critical for hormone production. And then on the right-hand side, we have the adrenal cortex hormones that regulate blood pressure, blood sugar levels, mineral metabolism, and healing and stress. So vitamin A, again, is critical for the formation of all of these stress hormones. But nobody here is ever under any stress, right? You don't have to worry about that one. When you have a lot of vitamin A in your diet, when you're really replete in vitamin A, stress is not a problem. It's exhilarating. It's a challenge. You'd be bored without stress. But if you're vitamin A deplete, then every little thing is stressful. Every little thing is a problem. So again, vitamin A is depleted by stress, too much protein, cold weather. Interesting, in Scandinavia, they put the box of cod liver oil outside the house. And when you went out the door, you took your little spoonful of cod liver oil because you were going out into the cold weather, see? Fever and illness deplete vitamin A. We strongly urge parents to let their children have fevers. It's very good for them. It primes the immune system. But fever does deplete vitamin A, so when your child has a fever, you give them cod liver oil, you give them egg yolks, cream, a little liver pate to keep the vitamin A stores up. And finally, exposure to toxins. Toxins are toxic because they interfere with vitamin A pathways. And so we all try to avoid the pesticides and the chemicals, but sometimes it's impossible. And if you have to work in a cleaner's or a hairdresser, or if the farmer next to you is spraying, you can't stop him, then you need to increase your vitamin A to deal with these toxins. We also have a myth about vitamin D, that to get adequate vitamin D, you just go out in the sunlight, expose your hands and face for 10 minutes, and you'll make all the vitamin D that you need. We now know that this is not correct. We only make vitamin D when the sunlight's directly overhead. In this part of the world, that takes place in July and August at noon. And if you want to go out and sunbathe with nothing on, I think it's a wonderful idea, but it's not very practical for most of us. And the truth is that people all over the world, they got their vitamin D from food. You know, in Africa, they were not so foolish as to go out in the sunlight in the middle of the day. They stayed in the shade, okay? And that's when they sat around and talked and laughed. And they did their work in the mornings and the evenings. But the Vitamin D Council tells us that we can't get vitamin D from food. We have to take a vitamin D pill, okay? But the truth is that there's a lot of good sources of vitamin D. And these are the same foods that we're being told not to eat: organ meats, butter, egg yolks. Egg yolks are a really good source of vitamin D from chickens outside. The cod liver oil, of course. And the last one I've listed is blood. Traditional cultures ate that blood. I really would like to see a tradition of blood sausage come back here to the United States. That's a good one. Good project for you, Abby. Let's get some blood sausage going. And like vitamin A, vitamin D is just used for so many things. Healthy bones, proper growth, insulin production, feel-good chemicals. You know, our body makes chemicals that are exactly the same as the chemicals in opium, cocaine, and marijuana. We make these, we have receptors for them, and if we're well-nourished, our natural state is to be high all the time. Okay, we don't need these drugs if we're well-nourished. And the people who take these drugs, you have to have a lot of sympathy for them because they're just trying to feel normal, even if it's for a short period of time. But the feel-good chemicals are highly dependent on vitamin D status. Okay, so where did we get these vitamins in the traditional American diet? We got them from butter, eggs, egg yolks, cream, cheese, from grass-fed animals. America was a huge dairying nation. You know, dairy was everywhere in America. This was unpasteurized and pasture-based. We got them from cod liver oil, which right up to the Second World War everybody got, and also from organ meats, such as liver, but also the organ meats were in the sausage, scrapple, liverwurst, pate, and so forth. So we were getting these activators in the diet up to the Second World War. Okay, third one, and then we can start going into the more practical stuff. There was a third vitamin that Dr. Price called Activator X, which we now know as vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 is the animal form of K1, which is in the green grass. So again, this is why we want our animals outside on pasture, eating the green grass, creating vitamin K2 for us. It plays an important role in facial development, and a sign of deficiency is the underdevelopment of the middle third of the face. And it is needed for deposition of phosphorus and calcium in the bones and the teeth. In fact, what prevents cavities is having a lot of vitamin K in the saliva. That's the test for whether you're going to get cavities or not. At the same time, it prevents the calcification and inflammation of the arteries. Vitamin K regulates where calcium and other minerals are supposed to go, and it puts them where they belong, in the hard tissues and not the soft tissues. So vitamin K is our #1 protection against heart disease. It's involved in the brain function, supports learning capacity, and it is vital for normal reproduction. So vitamin K is hugely important. And these three vitamins work together. A and D are like signaling proteins or signaling compounds, and then vitamin K activates the proteins after it gets a signal. So if you just take vitamin D, like they're telling you to, take 5,000 units of D every day, you're going to become deficient in A and K. Now a lot of people are taking vitamin K. Well, that's going to make you deficient in A and D. So you need to get these vitamins from the foods, and they tend to occur in the same foods. What vitamin K does is prevent the closure of the growth plates too early. The growth plates are at the end of the long bones, so people with a lot of vitamin K in their diet tend to grow tall. The growth plates stay open. And there is a growth plate at the side of the maxilla in the face, and that stays open so the face can grow broad. So vitamin K is this really essential vitamin for this facial development. Where do we get vitamin K? Well, the best source is bear fat. I'd love to see a little bear fat industry get going. In traditional cultures, bear fat was a sacred food, and the cure for infertility was the bear fat diet. You just ate nothing but bear fat for about a month, and that solved the problem. There is a type of vitamin K that's created by fermentation in natto, Japanese fermented soy food. I think I'd rather get my vitamin K elsewhere because natto is definitely an acquired taste, very stinky. The best sources in the traditional diet are bird fat, poultry fat, goose liver, duck liver, chicken liver, and the fat, goose fat, duck fats. And so when we eat skinless chicken breasts, we are throwing away the best part. Okay? But I think my favorite source of vitamin K is cheese. So, Abby, you can feel very proud. The grass-based cheeses are our best source, our most delicious source, the source that children will eat of this critical vitamin for growth, for learning, for thinking, for reproduction, for beauty. Cheese. So, and it's also in egg yolk, butter, chicken liver, fatty meats, actually a little bit in sauerkraut. So the brain, we're facing this tremendous crisis of learning disabilities, behavior problems, and we forget that the brain is an organ that needs to be nourished just like every other organ in the body. And what nourishes the brain? Well, vitamins A, D, and K. Absolutely critical for our brains. Choline. Choline is a cholesterol-based nutrient. Best sources are liver and egg yolks. And we need choline to make the connections in the brain while we're growing. The body goes through windows of opportunity when these connections can be made. And if you don't have the choline at the time, they're not going to happen. You can't go back and make them later on. So again, this is why we insist on pregnant women eating liver and egg yolks, and the first fruits for babies, liver and egg yolks, and all through the growth period. DHA, which is this special fat in seafood, omega-3 fat, but also the arachidonic acid, which is the omega-6 fat in butter and meat fats, and zinc. Again, very important for neurological development. That's in red meat and shellfish. Okay, so how should we eat? We should emphasize the sacred foods. Butter from pastured cows. I really should have put cheese there as well. Oh, I do have cheese in the third line. Lard from pastured animals. That's a surprise, right? Raw milk and cheese. Eggs, especially the yolks, from pastured animals. What's not to like about this diet? There's no renunciation here. Liver and other organ meats, we need to make pate, terrines, all the things you get in the butcher in Europe. We need to get this going in America. Oily fish and shellfish, fish eggs, so caviar, we could have caviar. Bone broths, and that means delicious soups and sauces. And the only one that's a little bit hard is the cod liver oil, okay? But all of these others are, what's not to like about this diet? But don't these foods have saturated fat in them? Okay. Saturated fat's the enemy, causes heart disease. Actually, saturated fat is essential in our bodies. 50% of our cell membranes need to be made of saturated fat, or your cells actually cannot work. And everyone's talking about mitochondrial disease today. The mitochondria have a cell membrane also, and 50% of those cells, so those fats have to be saturated for your mitochondria to work. You need saturated fat for your bones, for heart function, for liver function, for lung function, for kidney function. All require saturated fats. The immune system requires saturated fat. The essential fatty acids that we get from seafood and eggs and things can't work without saturated fats, and saturated fats are actually the best support for detoxification in the body. So the body needs saturated fats so badly that it has a backup plan. And if you're avoiding saturated fats, you are going to crave carbohydrates, because the backup plan is to make saturated fat out of refined carbohydrates, sugar and white flour. Body can really make saturated fats out of sugar and white flour. So this is why we get these terrible cravings today, because people are avoiding the saturated fats. And we want our fats to be grass-fed. We did some preliminary studies. We found 10 to 13 times more A and 3 times more D in grass-fed butter compared to confinement butter. You see, I made some butter from Costco cream on the left there. So the cow is a sacred animal. the cow is just a wonderful animal, and I think there's no accident that the patriarchs in the Bible had cows and goats. They had ruminant animals. And these, Dr. Price called them the foster mothers of mankind. These are the companions of mankind. And the sacred cow spends its whole day transforming green grass and sunlight into vitamins A, D, and K with their huge digestive system. And they're doing this for us, so we always eat the products of these ruminant animals with great thanks. Raw milk, we don't have a lot of time, but as you know, that the Weaton A. Price Foundation is a big promoter of raw milk. We maintain realmilk.com, and we have been showing people the health benefits of raw milk. All of the enzymes and vitamins and so forth are destroyed or diminished when you pasteurize. And the thing is that we have the technology today to provide clean, safe raw milk to everybody in the country. Instead, we use that technology to ruin our milk by pasteurization. And don't forget, most milk today is ultra-pasteurized. So that's over 230 degrees. It's pretty hot. And, it's this idea that this is unsafe. There have been no deaths. This is a 10-year period, but it's actually a 50-year period. There have been no deaths from raw milk in this country. And most of this milk is unregulated, comes from pretty dirty environments. There's a 5-fold protective system in raw milk. First of all, there are compounds that destroy pathogens in the milk. There are all the components of the immune system in raw milk, and they create the immune system in the infant. It helps build a healthy gut wall. There are a lot of things in raw milk that are specific to building a gut wall. And this is why we're seeing children recover from digestive problems and things like autism and Asperger's on raw milk. There are components that prevent the absorption of pathogens and toxins in the gut, that build that beautiful biofilm, healthy biofilm in the gut. And then there are enzymes that ensure assimilation of all the nutrients. 100% of the vitamins and minerals in raw milk are absorbed. No other food is like that. All other foods, we only absorb a fraction of the vitamins and minerals. And just some quick studies. This was in Randley Farm. It was in New York. It was an experimental farm. And the rat on the top was given only raw milk, good development, healthy fur, beautiful little rat. And the scrawny rats below were given pasteurized milk. They had hairless patches due to B6 deficiency. And the bones of the raw milk rats were longer and much denser. They weighed 206 grams compared to 146 grams on the pasteurized milk. So something about the raw milk puts the calcium in the right place in the bones. And we've been talking about growth, development, facial bones. You can see why raw milk is so important for the growth of children. And this study showed where the calcium goes in the pasteurized milk-fed animals. So the guinea pigs on raw whole milk had excellent growth, no abnormalities, and those on pasteurized milk had poor growth, muscle stiffness, emaciation and weakness, and death within a year. And when they did the autopsy, they found calcium streaked in the soft tissues. So there's the same amount of, there's the same amount of calcium in raw and pasteurized milk. That's true. But the calcium is used so much more efficiently and put in the right place when the milk is raw. Once you pasteurize it, it's not the same. And finally, my favorite one, the rat studies, 1931. Those on whole raw milk had good growth, sleek coats, clear eyes, and they were nice little rats. When the researchers came in, they enjoyed being picked up and petted. Those on pasteurized milk had rough coats, slow growth, their eyes lackluster. They were anemic because there is an enzyme called lactoferrin that helps the baby absorb all the iron in the milk, and that's destroyed by pasteurization. So they were not absorbing the iron. It was there, but they were not absorbing it. loss of vitality and weight, but their personalities changed. They were very irritable and often showed a tendency to bite when handled. They couldn't handle the stress of the researchers picking them up. The one testimonial that we have heard over and over again from parents is when they switch to no other dietary changes, we're just going to switch to raw milk, is an improvement in their children's behavior. I've heard parents say, I really didn't like my children until we started giving them raw milk, and now they're the greatest kids. So you often see a huge change in behavior. And we have a number of studies now, including this one, almost 15,000 children, showing that consumption of raw milk is the strongest factor in reducing the risk of allergy and asthma, whether the children lived on a farm or not. We lose 9 people per day to asthma in this country, many of them children. In some schools, 50% of the children are on inhalers. Okay? Asthma is horrible for the growing child. It's horrible for everybody. But what's the solution? It's raw milk for these children. Also, raw milk is a source of glutathione, which is our number 1 detoxification compound. It helps protect us in a toxic world. And it's only in the raw. It's in the whey proteins, and only if they're raw. So raw milk for children provides calcium for optimal growth, strong bones, strong teeth, protection against asthma, allergies, eczema, builds the healthy immune system. Glutathione protects against toxins and helps build a healthy gut wall. So I just can't stress enough how important it is for growing children in this country to get a good start with raw milk. It's an interesting photograph. The one on the left is raw milk magnified 175 times. You see the colloidal structure. This is the structure that we see in life forms. It is absolutely accurate to say that raw milk is a living food. You see what happens when we pasteurize? Same magnification is flat. So it is quite accurate to say that pasteurized milk is a lifeless food. Well, this is how they want us to eat. I call this a puritanical diet. It's virtuous, low fat. You're not going to indulge in fats in this, rich diet. You're going to be virtuous, low fat, low salt, high fiber. It's an impossible diet. This is what we're supposed to eat. And this diet creates cravings that just throw people into the arms of the pornographic foods. Okay? The two extremes. How many people here are Steiner students? Okay? The two extremes, Lucifer and Ehrenman. Okay? And what did he say? That the purpose of life is to learn to walk the middle. Okay? Neither of these extremes. Here's another form of food puritanism. Okay? Just lean meat, vegetables without any butter, This is health food. Okay? This is real good food. Chicken with the skin, meat with the fat, soup with broth and cream, and vegetables with lots of butter. These are health foods. This is the way we used to eat, We had the beautiful rib roast on Sunday, and then you had hash the rest of the week, and made soup with the bones. And these are delicious foods, so it's all good news. So we say you can have it all. There's no deprivation on the Wise Traditions diet. You can have meat. Sauces and gravies made with real bone broth actually make your meat more digestible, and of course they're so delicious. You can have bacon, natural bacon, eggs, seafood. You can have fats, especially butter, okay, lots of butter. You can have salt on this diet. You need salt. You have a salt taste in your mouth. It was not put there to torture you. It was put there so you would put salt on your food. You need salt for digestion. You cannot digest either protein or carbohydrates without salt. Grains. We're going to talk about grains in a minute. You can have grains. Life without grains is a pretty miserable life, I think. Milk and cheese, pickles, lacto-fermented foods, vegetables, soups. You can have some sweets, natural sweeteners, yep. And even soft drinks, naturally fermented soft drinks, like kombucha. And the best news of all is you don't have to eat kale. At least you don't have to eat it raw. Kale is one of these foods that's very hard to digest. Yes, in soups. Yes, well cooked. Yes, in your greens, the southern greens with the fat back and salt. But you don't have to eat raw kale. I think that's good news. Okay, so you're transitioning into this diet. The first step is to get your fats right. We have the 6 basic good fats and oils. Butter, of course, and lard, especially grass-fed lard. The olive oil is for your salad dressings. Learn to make your own salad dressings. Olive oil is the good oil. All these other industrial oils are bad news. Duck fat. Get some duck fat in your diet. Do potatoes in duck fat. Cook in duck fat. That's for your vitamin K. Coconut oil. Mary Enig and I have popularized coconut oil. It has some very important properties. And then your cod liver oil is, you're not going to cook in cod liver oil. That's for your A and D. Remember that grass-fed butter is the queen of fats, great source of A, D, and K. It's also a great source of vitamin E. It has protective shorter-chain fatty acids, which are very good for your brain and your metabolism, cholesterol, and it's an excellent source of a fat called arachidonic acid, which is really a critical fat for digestion and for your brain, and a lot of good things. We'll talk more about this later. Don't be afraid of lard. Americans cooked in lard, and it's actually the solution to our vitamin D deficiency problems in the States. We found in one test 12 times more vitamin D in lard from pastured animals compared to conventional. One test found over 1,000 units of vitamin D in 1 tablespoon of grass-fed lard. It is a vitamin D food. I love this old ad. There's a lot of jokes about this on the internet, but it's actually true. The vitamin D in lard help the body make neurochemicals that protect against depression. And we've now found that vitamin D is a great source of that lard is a great source of vitamin K. So this is one of our little bumper stickers here. Read it carefully, okay? We battle for the lard. We're the salivation army. Okay, the fish liver oils. Now, we're not talking about fish oil. Fish oil is worthless. It's an industrial product. But we have about 4 or 5 brands of unheated cod liver oil that we recommend, and use our shopping guide. It's also on our website. Excellent sources of A and D, and also DHA, which is very important for your brain. And the high vitamin oils that we recommend allow one to get enough A and D you can overdose on EPA. So use our recommended brands. It's all about balance. You want the A and D in cod liver oil to be balanced by vitamin K from other foods. The cod liver oil is highly unsaturated. You want to balance that with saturated fats. And the EPA and DHA, the omega-3 fatty acids in cod liver oil, need to be balanced with the omega-6, which is in animal fats. So you take the cod liver oil in the context of a diet that has all these good animal foods in it. And it's not hard to get kids to take cod liver oil. So use an eyedropper or a syringe. They grab it and lick it afterwards. This is an old ad for cod liver oil. Your baby, give him the help he needs to build a well-shaped head, a strong, straight back, sound, even teeth. Daily use is important. So even back in the 30s, they recognized the role of cod liver oil. And we're going to talk more about cheese after our break, but raw cheese from pastured animals is a complete food. Has every vitamin and mineral that you need. If you were stuck on a desert island with only one food, the food would be cheese. We have looked at egg yolks. We found 8 times more D and 2 times more A in the pastured egg yolk than the supermarket egg yolks. Pastured egg yolks are a powerhouse of vitamin D. And this is the pastured poultry model that we are recommending. Shellfish, wonderful foods. And here on the East Coast, we have access to wonderful shellfish, oysters, mussels, shrimp, crab. Liver, lots of ways to eat liver. You can saute it with, in bacon fat. So liver is really high in vitamin A. And I had a Hungarian woman tell me, in Hungary, she said, we would not eat liver unless we cooked it in lard. We thought there was something missing from the liver if we didn't cook it in lard. Well, what was in the lard was the vitamin D to balance the vitamin A. I love these traditions. So liverwurst, Braunschweiger, this is a very good, this is U.S. Wellness Meats, has a beautiful, all-natural liverwurst. This is the kind of thing that we can do in our local processing. Pate, put it in sausage, and we also put it in things like meatloaf, meatballs, things like that. So there's a recipe for spaghetti. It's it's kind of a spaghetti sauce in Nourishing Traditions. It has liver in it. And my son called me up one day. He was cooking, and he said, "Mom, I'm just cooking this spaghetti sauce here, and I see that you have chicken livers in this spaghetti sauce." He said, "Did you put this in our spaghetti sauce when we were growing up?" And I said, "Yes, I did." He said, "Well, you hit it pretty well." So no food is higher in nutrients than liver. We have apples, carrots, red meat, and liver here. Look at the phosphorus, for example, or iron. Zinc. Now, red meat's the one where that's actually higher in zinc than liver. Some people really need a lot of zinc and need to eat red meat every day, almost every meal. Look at copper, B2, no vitamin A in apples and carrots, a little bit in red meat, but look at the liver. There's more vitamin C in liver than there is in apples and carrots. And look at B6 and B12. I often say if you're on a budget and you can't afford to eat a lot of meat, if you just eat liver once a week, you'll be getting the same B6 and B12 as somebody eating red meat with every meal. So liver is the ideal poverty food, actually. Budget food, let's call it budget food. And fish eggs. I think we need to work on ways of getting fish eggs to people because they were a sacred food in many cultures. And this little girl is holding dried fish eggs. She lives in the Andes, 12,000 feet up, but they took the fish eggs up to the mountains. And they told Dr. Price it was so we could have healthy babies. So the salmon caviar is a wonderful nutrient-dense food, and it's not particularly expensive. And this is a recipe, I can't remember which book it's in, but these are little crispy pancakes with some creme fraiche and some yellow caviar, which is the least expensive. Little chopped onion, little parsley on top. They're like candy. They're so delicious. Learn to make broth. I often said that we need to make broth locally, little shops. We need a brothel in every town. But and it's another thing that the local butchers can do, make broth. But there's a South American proverb, good broth resurrects the dead. And basically what you're getting in broth is melted collagen, which is, we actually have more collagen in our bodies than we have muscle protein. So we need to balance that muscle protein with the collagen. And you use the broth to make soups and stews and sauces and things that make your food taste really delicious. So these bone broths supply minerals in a form that's easy to assimilate. They supply the cartilage, the collagen that help build healthy cartilage in our bodies. They supply amino acids that the body uses to detoxify. So they're really good to have these broths in our toxic world. They supply gelatin that helps digestion. They support gut health. And interestingly, the glycine in broth regulates mood, regulates dopamine levels. This is why the chicken soup makes us feel so good. You know, it brings the dopamine up to where it's supposed to be. Not too high and not too low. Now, we have something in our diet today called glyphosate. What is it? Roundup. And what's happening is that glyphosate gets built into places in your body where you're supposed to have glycine. You have glycine in all your cartilage. You have glycine in your joints and everything. And the glyphosate gets built in there instead of the glycine, and your cartilage is not going to work. You're going to be in a lot of pain. Okay, start the day with a good breakfast. So 2 pastured eggs, 2 pieces of pastured bacon, natural bacon. Now, Jeffrey is the master of cooking bacon because he always puts some fruit in the bacon pan. So we've got pineapple here, but apricots, apples. So you can have this on our diet. I don't know of any other diet where you can have pineapple cooked in bacon fat. And it's a delicious way to cook the fruit. Sourdough toast with some butter, glass of whole raw milk, maybe a grapefruit or a piece of fresh fruit, and this is when you take your cod liver oil. And you can go all day on breakfast like this. Really get you started. Okay, so while we're choosing all these good foods, we need to also say no to industrial food-like substances. I'm gonna hurry now. Dr. Price said life in its fullness is Mother Nature obeyed, and factory foods are not Mother Nature's foods. So we just need to just say no. Just say no. The worst offenders, industrial fats and oils, high fructose corn syrup, and agave nectar is actually a kind of corn fructose syrup that's sold in the health food stores. MSG and artificial sweeteners, the modern soy foods, breakfast cereals, and pasteurized and homogenized milk. So I'm going to go about 10 minutes. We got started a little bit late, but I'll go quickly. So I don't want to get into all the chemical description of all these industrial fats and oils, but the liquid polyunsaturated oils, the cooking oils, they break down under heat, and they cause uncontrolled reactions in the body. The solid, partially hydrogenated oils, the margarines and spreads, they inhibit reactions in the body. So if you're eating these industrial fats and oils, you're going to have biochemical chaos on the cellular level. It might manifest as an immune problem or arthritis or cancer. Who knows how it's going to manifest in you, but I guarantee you, you're going to have problems. So these are the bad fats. Margarine and all the spreads, even the so-called healthy, heart-healthy spreads. All of these bottled dressings, make your own dressing. Read the ingredients on these bottled dressings. There's nothing worse. And they're made with the cheapest oils. And then, your cooking oils and all of the things that are made with these oils. These are the bad fats. Modern soy foods, please avoid them. They are imitation foods. Soy is very high in estrogens, and it also causes thyroid problems. We have been working with prisoners in the state of Illinois. In 2003, they were given an all-soy diet, and the health problems that ensued from that were incredible. Horrible digestive problems. The men grew breasts. They called it chemical castration. Interestingly, the one woman prison in Illinois, they gave the soy diet, and the women went on a hunger strike. They stopped menstruating from this diet. And so they stopped it for the women. But the men, they continued. We had a lawsuit. We tried to get an injunction against this. We did not succeed. But this January, we actually won because they went back to meat. They stopped serving the soy because the men were just so sick. And all of these men getting out, unless they could afford to buy commissary food, were on disability because it couldn't work. So soy is very high in all kinds of things that block digestion. The isoflavones are the estrogens, and they cause thyroid dysfunction. And very irritating, can cause kidney stones. I mean, it's just a toxic brew. Also want to warn you about breakfast cereals. The breakfast cereals are created by a process called extrusion, which totally alters the proteins in the breakfast cereals and makes them highly indigestible, actually sort of neurotoxic. And all the highly seasoned foods loaded with MSG, which is a neurotoxin again, that also, including causing autism, headaches, Alzheimer's and stuff, also causes obesity. And if you don't believe me, go to PubMed and just plug in MSG-induced obesity. And that's how they make lab animals obese so they can study obesity. So they give them MSG. So there really is something in our food that is causing people to be fat, even if they're not eating a lot. And that's the MSG. So, and it's usually not labeled, comes under many guises, usually hydrolyzed things or caseinates or things extracted, stuff like that. And this is a very important book that was written a number of years ago showing what MSG does to the nerve cells, kind of fries them. We want to honor our gut flora. We now know that the human gut needs about 6 pounds of good flora. This helps digest our food, creates nutrients, protects us against toxins, and creates feel-good chemicals. So we want to eat our fermented foods. These actually are quite delicious. You don't eat a lot of them, but you eat a little bit with every meal. So you're constantly replenishing your good bacteria. Every single traditional culture in the world eats raw fermented foods, without exception. So we need to also. And then there's fermented beverages, which are the wonderful, healthy replacement to soft drinks. And I love these photographs from Africa. Africa is the land of fermented beverages, and grains there are a beverage, and they make them into these very sour, lacto-fermented beers, which would be an acquired taste for Westerners, but they're drunk by the gallon, unless they switch to Coca-Cola, of course. Okay. Well, now what about grains? How many people here struggle with grains? You know, especially if you're a student of Steiner, this is kind of a mystery because Steiner was so, thought the grains were so important. They were a gift from Zarathustra, and they were very important for the develop of our spiritual body, was to eat grains. And yet so many people today cannot eat grains. Well, part of the problem is that grains are the hardest food there is to digest, full of enzyme inhibitors, phytic acid, tannins that are hard to digest, and the starches and sugars and gluten and cellulose are impossible to digest. So in traditional cultures, they pre-digested those grains by soaking, sprouting, fermenting, or sour leavening, and that's what we need to do with our own grains. The herbivore that lives on grasses and grains, very hard to digest, has from 2 to 4 compartments in its digestive tract, and these act as fermentation tanks. So they can't digest them either. They ferment them. We don't have a fermentation tank in our body. We have a simple stomach, and all traditional societies have learned to pre-digest those grains outside the body before they eat them. So the process is to apply moisture, warmth, slight acidity, and time. This is what you need for a seed to sprout, and this is what you need to deactivate all of these preservatives that are causing so much digestive problems. This is a wonderful example. The Cherokee bread was made by cooking the cornmeal and wrapping it in a corn husk and putting it aside for 2 weeks, allowing it to ferment. In Central America, they used a banana leaf instead of a corn husk. But the corn was always fermented first, and then it was made into your tamale or your tortilla or whatever. So we recommend that you soak your oatmeal overnight in warm water and something acidic like a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice. Soak it overnight so you have your moisture, warmth, slight acidity, and time. And the next morning you cook your oatmeal with some salt till it's nice and creamy. And there's your wonderful oatmeal. This is a great place to use a natural sweetener. It's fine. And you might want some nuts or coconut. But you also add fat because you need the fats to absorb all the minerals in your oatmeal and also to prevent the blood sugar roller coaster because the fats slow down the release of glucose into the bloodstream. So, I like butter on my oatmeal. I usually put about a half a stick of butter on my oatmeal in the morning, but you can put more on if you want to. So that's a great vehicle for butter. Get to know sourdough, and one of the best things that we've seen happen recently is all these sourdough producers. The sour process is a fermentation process that makes your bread easy to digest. And that's how you eat your bread. You want to see teeth marks in the butter. Okay. Don't worry about salt. You need salt. Need it for digestion. It's actually essential for brain development. Pregnant women need to eat salt, and you need to put salt on the baby food. And all these books out there are telling you to withhold salt from babies. Very, very bad. You want to use the unrefined salt that has all the magnesium and trace minerals in it. So use unrefined salt. Anyone here ever get tired? So, did you know that 70% of all your energy goes into digestion? 70%. And anything you can do to make digestion easier is going to give you more energy and make you less tired. So, if you just can make digestion 1% easier, that's going to give you like 3% more energy. So raw dairy, not pasteurized, because raw dairy is so easy to digest. Pasteurized is extremely hard to digest. Proper preparation of grains that pre-digest those grains, so you're not putting a lot of energy into digesting those grains. The lacto-fermented foods, which give you the beneficial bacteria, and the gelatin-rich bone broths. So this is the formula for making your food easy to digest and giving you a lot more energy. I guarantee you, if you do these things, you'll have more energy. Okay, some quick strategies for implementing this diet. How many of you hate to cook? Okay, you don't have to cook on this diet. You actually don't have to cook. If you don't like to cook, you eat like the French. I think people would be surprised to know the French don't cook. At least traditionally they didn't cook. They didn't have kitchens in those beautiful French apartments. They went down to the cafes and the traiteurs and bought their food. But it's going to be expensive if you do this. You're going to need to purchase high-end food, but maybe that's okay. In 1970, we spent about 17% of our budget on food and 7% on health care. Okay, today we have cheap food. We spend 8% of our budget on food, but we're spending 18% on health care. So the total is more. So I'd just rather spend it on food myself. So find upscale delis and markets. I mean, this food's going to be expensive, but it is good food. So here are nutritious foods that you do not have to cook. Raw cheese, and you can get that right here. Delicious raw cheese. The salami, ham, and cold cuts, get the really high-end, no additives, natural ones. Sourdough bread and butter. Pate and liverwurst, you can buy those. Raw milk, you don't have to cook, obviously. You can now buy sauerkraut, so there's your fermented food. You can buy broth. Oysters, wonderful raw food, very healthy. And kombucha, which is a natural soft drink. You don't have to prepare any of these. They're all available now. Now, if you're willing to cook just a little bit, okay. Learn to make scrambled or fried eggs with bacon. Learn to make a good breakfast. Learn to do the soaked oatmeal, which is, by the way, extremely economical. And what we do, we make a big pot of it about once a week, and we just keep heating that up. So it's easy and, doesn't cost much. Learn to make salad dressing. The stuff that you buy is complete garbage. It's very easy to make salad dressing. Learn to cook steak and sausage in a pan, some sauteed potatoes. Learn to steam some vegetables and put butter on them. Learn to make crispy nuts, which is a way we have for preparing nuts that make a really nice snack. So none of these is hard. There's your basic recipes just to get you started. You want to add to your repertoire? Brown rice is a good one. Learn to make baked chicken with a sauce, and then you have all that chicken left over for salads or soups. Learn to make bone broth. Get a slow cooker, make bone broth. Learn to make a stock pot stew, mashed potatoes, a basic soup, and learn to make chili. And you know what? If you can make all these things, you are a cook. You are a very accomplished cook. It's not many, these basic recipes. What about eating at restaurants? Choose higher-end restaurants, not fast food places. Order simple foods, put butter on everything. The worst things will be the soups, the sauces, the salad dressings, and the fried foods, if you can avoid those. And for breakfast, you have the fried eggs and bacon, not the scrambled eggs. They come in a milk carton with all sorts of ingredients. But if you have fried eggs, you know they came out of a shell. Okay? A typical hotel breakfast, you know, the continental breakfast. These are diabetes starter kits, okay? And they cause high blood sugar, and then they lead to the blood sugar crash. Mid-morning, you can't function. What about what to drink? A very easy soft drink. Order sparkling water with a squeeze with a piece of lemon and put a pinch of salt in. Or even take a little bit of sea salt with you for your soft drink. So here are some delicious foods that you can have on the Wise Traditions diet. You can have fried chicken. Fry it in lard, of course. You can have pate and caviar. You can have meatloaf, roast beef. You can have Mexican food. You prepare it with lard. Spare ribs with your homemade barbecue sauce. You know, these are all the great comfort foods. You can have these on the Wise Traditions diet. Mashed potatoes. You can have bacon burgers. Okay. And you can have ice cream. Make it at home. Okay. Very easy to make. So that is the Wise Traditions diet. I think it's good news for everyone. Please visit our table back here where we have all the free brochures of the Weaton A. Price Foundation. And go to our website. It's huge. Everything we've ever published is on our website. And we have a shopping guide that names brand names, and it's also available as an app. Our Healthy for Life booklets are back there. Get you started. We have a healthy baby issue, a heart disease issue. So, to summarize, everything they did in the traditional diet was aimed at making the food more nutrient dense, more digestible, more available, to maximize the nutrients. Everything we do in the modern diet is aimed at making the foods more convenient, cheaper, and that minimizes the nutrients. So that's the big difference between traditional and modern diets. And it's really not hard to get back to the traditional diet. We have to think about it, you know. The traditional people didn't have to think about what they ate. It was just there for them. We have to think about every morsel that goes into our mouths. So that's the big difference between the modern man and the traditional man. It's not that we don't have these foods, it's that we have to find them and make a conscious decision to eat them. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. It's really wonderful.
So the Weaton A. Price Foundation has almost 500 local chapters. We have quite a few in New York. And if you're, kind of bewildered, how do I get started? How do I find these foods? Contact your local chapter leader, and they're all listed on our website.